So, the first example of the four examples we're going to talk about, Jesus being a dissident. In the allegorical story in the New Testament of Jesus, he was a dissident who opposed the three major institutions of slavery of his day. And incidentally, these three institutions are the three main institutions which still perpetuate human slavery today. Nothing has changed since the day that the story of Jesus was, the time period it was written about. Zero. Nothing has changed. The same institutions are in control of this planet as were in control of this planet then over 2,000 years ago. And here's what they are. I call them the unholy trinity. Religion, which is really the father figure of it all. See, people always ask me what's at the top in the worldly sense. Oh, are banks in control, Mark? Are the governments in control? Is the shadow government or deep state in control? No. It's a priest class. Those who are familiar with my work will understand this. The force of religion ultimately runs this world still to this day. They've just taken a overtly closed down role, a hidden role. They've gone from the overt to the covert. Okay? So they've gone into the underground, occulted realm, but they are still ruling from that occulted realm. The occult rulers of the world constitute a religious priest class, as I've talked about in much of my other work. But this is the father of the unholy trinity, because it is thought control. That's what religion is there to do, false religion. It perpetuates ignorance through blind belief. It's based upon belief, not search for truth, for the actual truth of the reality of the laws of nature. It is controlled by a dark occult priest class, and religion is the essence of all forms of mind control. The two things I'm going to be talking about underneath are also forms of mind control and religion. That's why religion is the ultimate force holding back an understanding of natural law and true freedom from humanity. Because money, as I'm going to talk about in a moment, is also a religion. It's the second most powerful religion that there is, besides actual religion itself. The idea of a hardened false belief system in the mind, instead of a search for and an understanding of truth. So religion is the basis of the old world order of slavery, so-called order. It works with these other two institutions as part of the unholy trinity system. Money is the feminine or mother figure of the trinity because it's about emotional control. Just as religion is about the control of our thoughts, the control of what we care about is directed by the money aspect or the financial aspect of the unholy trinity system of control. How many people continuously emotionally focus upon money almost all day, every day? This is what they have. This is what the main motivational force for behavior is in the world. This is what I just talked about in Acapulco at the Anarchapulco conference. Because you have a lot of monetary religionists there. I'm trying to explain to these people who are super gung-ho into the financial sector of things and how they want to, end the Fed and bring in cryptocurrency prosperity. Money is still a form of a religion. This is something that if it controls your emotions and this is what you focus on, instead of performing behaviors for the reason that they are simply the right thing to do, you're falling short of an accurate understanding of truth and morality. And that constitutes religious binding. The monetary system perpetuates apathy for truth. If there's no money to be made in it, why do it? It's the new God to which human beings now entirely devote their care, attention, and energy. I call money the ultimate religion, the ultimate form of a religion. It's the basis for the new world order, the dark new world order. The so-called order, but it's chaos and death. And these two institutions, religion and money, always work together to actually create the death. This is what the allegorical story of Jesus in the New Testament was about, the unholy trinity of religion, money, and government. Jesus went against the religious priest class first, the Pharisees and Sadducees, as I'm going to be explaining, then the temple money changers, which was the fiat currency bankers of his day. And then finally, the Roman government had him crucified at the behest of father and mother. So government is the bodily part of the control system because it works through physical means, through their order followers. It perpetuates cowardice because people don't want to speak up and do anything because of the fear of harm that will be conducted upon them by the government agents. It's based upon the erroneous belief in authority. It's the violent enforcer for father and mother, the dark occultists and the banksters. And it is itself the New World Order of chaos and death, the dark New World Order. So let's look at how Jesus was a dissident against these three institutional bodies. Jesus was an opponent of the established religious priest class during his lifetime. He taught spirituality, which was in direct opposition to the worldview of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the most powerful Judaic religious sects of his time. And he didn't do it so politely, folks. You read the stories, he was very vehement against these people and their very sketchy morality. And they were so concerned with, dogmatic law in the Judaic religion and religious texts, but they weren't really focused on truly treating people as other free sovereign beings. True morality wasn't their real objective. Control was. And that's why he went against them. And if you really read the stories, he wasn't so soft-spoken about it. He told them just like it was. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind and say how it was. Again, you don't have to accept the historicity of the account given in the scriptural text, but the idea is to understand the allegorical principles therein contained so that we can learn a lesson from them. Jesus spoke out against the monetary powers of his day. He even took physical action against them in the famous biblical story where he drove the money changers from the temple in Jerusalem. And the money changers were the equivalent of the monopolistic banking institutions of his time. You can compare them almost to the Federal Reserve System, if you will, or the other central banks. He wasn't afraid to take out a switch and whip people in the ass if he had to. Because what they were doing was completely immoral, and it was fraudulent, and it was harming other people of their hard-earned resources, etc. And it was defrauding them mentally and spiritually as well, placing value upon money when it was supposed to be about morality. Jesus spoke out against the so-called authority of the Roman government, which was the most powerful governmental institution on earth in his time. Government was the institution which eventually convicted Jesus as a, quote, enemy of the state and ordered that he be murdered by crucifixion. So, he often said, render to Caesar that which is Caesar's, which is, people think that's so soft. He's talking about, let them have their crap. That's crap. And don't have anything to do with their crap. That's what he was saying the equivalent of in that type of language. People think it's a soft way of saying it, but in his time it would have been like, to hell with the government. Let idiots believe in that shit. Understand what is really, quote unquote, of God, meaning natural law, meaning true, objective, inherent, cosmic, universal morality, which is what he was attempting to teach people. Unfortunately, even with the power of the allegorical teachings, whether you believe he was an actual, rabbi of that time period and geographic location, or whether you think it was just a story written by human beings to try to attempt to convey morality to others, it didn't really work out so well, did it? Because we haven't been liberated from slavery yet. We're still in the same human condition that the people of that time were in then. Nothing has changed, which is why we have to step up the effort of the great work. Through the allegorical story in the New Testament, we see how all the institutions of slavery of Jesus' time, the same institutions of slavery that exist today, colluded to have him murdered with the consent of the brainwashed population. The government, the religious institutions. Here you have the religious and governmental institutions together, depicted in a cinematic portrayal of the events as depicted in the New Testament. And then Jesus was finally the murder was actually performed by the police of his time, the Roman centurions. I say to traditional Christians all the time, you do realize the police murdered Jesus Christ, do you not? And they look at me like I have like snakes growing out of my neck, and big, huge, antelope horns coming out the top of my head. And I'm like, how could you read the same text that I just read and not understand that the murder of Christ was conducted by a collusion of religion, money, and governmental powers? And the actual assassination / murder / execution was conducted by the police that followed their orders to do it. How could people who claim to be adherents to the Christian religion not understand that allegory? It's unfathomable to me that they cannot recognize the Roman centurions were the police and military of the Roman Empire during that time period. And if they were given the orders to do this and did it because they were following orders, people think that wouldn't happen today. If Jesus existed today and the police were commanded to murder him on command, they would do it in a heartbeat. Without questioning the motives of their masters one iota. And yet, people who call themselves Christians can't see it. They're a joke. They're fake-ass Christians, and they're a joke. And I'll say it to all the so-called Christians listening out there in internet land, you're a joke. You're fake-ass Christians. You're not real, true Christians at all. You've been clowned and you think that the authority of the universe shares power with little old man, with little old humanity. And that's a joke, because they bought Romans 13. Yeah, the book that they buy, the justification for authority being invested in man is called Romans. And they can't even see that contradiction. It's right in the word of what the book is called. Who do you think wrote the book? Why is it called Romans? The people who murdered Jesus are telling you that their authority is legitimate. And joke-ass Christians can't comprehend that. You're clowned out, boys and girls who call yourselves real Christians. You're clowned out. You're asshats. Through the allegorical story in the New Testament, we see how all the institutions of slavery of Jesus' time, okay, I've read this already. The Roman centurions actually performed the physical crucifixion in the biblical account. They performed the harmful behavior upon being ordered to do so. And caused the actual death of the being that was actually teaching true morality. And yet, people would have said in that day, they're just doing their jobs. They're just following their orders. The bottom line is the unholy trinity of priests, bankers, politicians, and police, so in other words, religion, money, and government, murdered Jesus Christ. That's the unholy trinity that murdered the teacher of the values of the Christian tradition, and the people who actually say that they're followers of the values of that tradition don't even understand that simple concept that's laid out beautifully in their own allegorical stories and their own scriptures. Yet someone who doesn't claim to be of quote-unquote religious faith does understand what's actually being taught in those scriptures and is trying to communicate it to people who say they're devout Christians.